Last week, I did a review on the horror anime show titled Another, and during the video, I mentioned the fact that there is a movie based on the novel that the anime is also based on, and today I'm going to give you my spoiler-free thoughts and my spoiler-filled thoughts on the movie titled Another. After a chain of deaths at a junior high school, new transfer student Kochi Sakakibara turns to a mysterious girl who holds the keys to the dark mystery. Now, before getting into this review, I think it is important to mention that I will be comparing this movie more to the anime than the book. Since I actually haven't read the book yet, I do plan on eventually reading it, and I'll talk about things I thought the anime did better or the movie did better for the story, though. I don't think there's anything that the movie really did better than the anime. Let's get straight into the spoiler-free part of this video. If I were to describe this film, I think the best way to describe it is that it felt like a light version of the Another show. And by that, I mean its story is fairly similar to the story told in the anime, but you get less information than the anime, probably because this has a shorter runtime. One of the biggest side effects is the fact that the character relationships aren't fleshed out very well at all, and most of the characters are really reduced in their importance. A lot of them just aren't very important to the story. I think this movie would have done better if it was made as a two-parter, so we could have spent more time with these characters and we're able to explore the story more and be able to get deeper into why these deaths are happening and backstory of some of these characters. There were many comments made in this film that were never expanded upon. Now, in the anime, it really explores things that this movie very, very briefly went over. I will say, though, that this movie was a bit different and it changed things up a little bit. And while I don't like every change or everything that they did differently, I am glad they changed things up a bit. This isn't a carbon copy of the anime, which I'm grateful for. I also like how the show has different deaths than the anime, but none of the deaths really stood out to me. None of them were very gory, but they were fairly inventive. I say that kind of lightly. Nothing that insane, but still decently creative. I think most of the deaths, though, were just a bit of a letdown, a bit of a disappointment for me. I do think it is important to mention, though, that I was disappointed with a lot of the deaths that were in the anime, and there were also a couple of scenes with not the greatest CGI, but it wasn't there enough for it to be that big of a problem for me. Overall, I don't think this film is horrifically offensive or anything like that, but I wouldn't say the film is great. If you want to watch something about this story, go and watch the anime. You don't need to watch this movie unless you really want to. Okay, those were my spoiler-free thoughts. If you enjoyed this video or found it informative, I would recommend my review on the anime version of the story. I will put the link to that video in the description, so you can check it out if you want. Okay, let's get into my spoiler-filled thoughts. So, big spoiler warning. There is a scene where someone is impaled in the eye with a spoon, and the scene is just really goofy with how the guy kind of reacts to with having a spoon stuck in his eye socket, and just how he reacts. It's pretty goofy, and I don't hate that. I thought it was entertaining. There's also a scene where someone's falling and it looks pretty fake. I really wish that Misaki's twin was explored as a character more. I feel like they might have briefly mentioned her twin if they did it at all. Her twin is a pretty important character in the anime, so I feel like they should have focused on the twin a little bit more. That can also be said with basically every character in the show. I feel like none of them were that important. Basically, no one except Koichi and me were really explored. They're the only characters that are really, really important to the story, except for maybe a couple others, but most of the characters in this film just aren't as important as they were in the anime. So honestly, those are my thoughts. I would love to know your opinion on this film if you've seen it. There's probably a pretty big likelihood that you have not. I don't think this film is very well known, but if you have, I would love to know your thoughts on this. And with that, bye.